The radio cuts out mid-sentence, and everything goes silent. Your sergeant grabs your collar and tells you to make the call. 8 soldiers are waiting, and they are all looking at you. You have spent 13 weeks learning how to follow orders inside this unit. Every morning begins the same way, with someone else deciding what happens next. Your Sergeant Kowalski has handled every critical decision since you joined the squad. He moves through chaos the way experienced soldiers always do, with quiet and absolute certainty. You have watched him redirect ambushes, reorganize broken formations, and talk men through panic attacks in the field. You assumed that watching him closely was enough to absorb whatever it is that makes a leader. But absorption is not the same as being ready, and you're starting to understand that now. 3 days ago, your unit entered a forward operating area near the Eastern Ridge network. The terrain here changes fast, with dense tree cover giving way to exposed rock faces within meters. Your squad of 8 has been running reconnaissance patrols along the northern corridor since arrival. Kowalski assigned you a second-in-command 2 days ago, a decision that surprised everyone, including yourself. He told you quietly that morning that you had stopped reacting and started thinking, and that mattered. You did not feel different, but his confidence in you planted something uncomfortable and heavy inside your chest. This morning, the patrol moves out at 0500, with cold air pressing hard against your exposed face. The ridge is quiet in the way that trained soldiers learn to distrust completely and immediately. Kowalski moves at point position, reading the terrain with slow and deliberate head movements ahead of you. You track his hand signals and relay them backward through the squad without breaking your own stride. The northern corridor opens into a narrow draw, and Kowalski raises a closed fist to halt everyone. He crouches low against a boulder and studies the ridgeline above with his binoculars for 30 seconds. You move up beside him and scan the same direction without speaking, waiting for his read on the situation. He tells you quietly that there are fresh boot prints in the soft ground, moving perpendicular to your patrol route. Your stomach tightens immediately, but you keep your breathing controlled and your expression flat for the squad behind you. Kowalski gestures for the squad to spread into a loose wedge formation along the draw's northern edge. You move to the right flank and position Reyes and Okafor behind a natural rock shelf for cover. The draw is exposed on 3 sides, and your exit options are limited to the route you just came from. Kowalski clicks his radio twice to signal the FOB that you are holding position and observing possible contact. The radio crackles back once in confirmation, and then the signal drops into complete and immediate static. Kowalski tries the frequency twice more, adjusting the squelch dial with practiced fingers before lowering the handset. He turns to you with a steady expression and says the comms are down, and this decision belongs to you now. For exactly 2 seconds, you feel the weight of every mistake you have ever made inside this unit pressing downward. Then something quieter takes over, something that does not feel like confidence but functions exactly the same way in the field. You tell Reyes to move 10 meters east and confirm whether the prints continue beyond the draw's far edge. Reyes moves fast and low, covering the ground in under 15 seconds before signaling back with 2 fingers pointing forward. The prints continue, which means whatever made them is moving away from your position rather than toward it. You exhale slowly and process the information while keeping your eyes on the ridgeline directly above the squad. Okafor shifts behind you and asks in a low voice whether you are calling a withdrawal or holding the position. The question is reasonable, and 6 months ago you would have frozen completely, waiting for someone else to answer it. Instead, you tell him clearly that the squad is holding for 90 seconds while you assess the upper ridge movement. You pull out your map and study the terrain contours against what your eyes are telling you about the ground. The draw sits at the base of a natural funnel, which means anyone above has a clean line of sight downward. staying exposed here any longer than necessary is the kind of decision that gets written into after-action reports as an error. You fold the map and tell Kowalski that you are moving the squad back 40 meters to the tree line for cover. Kowalski nods once without adding anything, and that single nod carries more weight than any verbal confirmation possibly could. You signal the squad in sequence, moving each pair back in overlapping bounds while you and Kowalski hold the rear. The movement takes under 2 minutes, and the squad settles into the tree line without noise or visible confusion from anyone. You position yourself at the tree line edge and watch the draw for movements, while your heartbeat gradually returns to a normal rhythm. Kowalski crouches beside you and says quietly that you just moved 8 people out of a kill zone without losing a second. You do not respond immediately because the relief and the weight of what just happened are arriving at exactly the same time. The tree line holds for 4 minutes before the ridge line above the draw erupts with movement and sharp cracking sounds. 3 figures move fast across the exposed rock face, crossing left to right in a low and deliberate crouch. Reyes presses against the tree beside you and asks through his teeth whether those are friendlies or confirmed hostile contacts. You watch the figures for 3 full seconds, tracking their movement pattern and the direction of their weapons orientation. Their rifles are pointed downward into the draw, where your squad was standing less than 6 minutes ago. You tell the squad in a controlled voice that nobody moves and nobody fires without a direct order from you. Okafor exhales sharply behind you, and you can hear the tension moving through the squad like a current through wire. The figures on the ridge stop moving, and one of them raises binoculars toward the draw below their position. They are searching the ground your squad just vacated, which confirms they knew your patrol route before you arrived here. That realization lands hard, because it means the comms failure and the boot prints are connected rather than coincidental events. You turn to Kowalski and tell him quietly that someone reported your patrol route to a third party before this morning. Kowalski holds your gaze for 2 seconds and then nods slowly, confirming that he reached the same conclusion independently. You key the backup radio on Okafor's rig and attempt the FOB frequency again, adjusting the channel by 2 digits. The line opens for exactly 1 second, long enough for you to transmit your grid position and the word contact before cutting. You do not know if the transmission reached anyone, but you have done everything within your current means to report the situation. The figures on the ridge hold their position for another 3 minutes before beginning to move northward away from the draw. You watch them until they disappear behind the rock face, and the ridgeline returns to its previous stillness and silence. Nobody in the squad speaks, and the tree line feels heavier now with the weight of what almost happened down in that draw. You wait 90 seconds after the figures vanish, before signaling the squad to prepare for a controlled withdrawal back to the FOB. You assign Reyes to point and place Okafor on rear security, covering the route behind the squad during the return movement. Kowalski moves beside you in the middle of the formation without assuming control, which tells you everything about his intention right now. He's letting you finish what you started, and that decision requires more trust than any verbal endorsement possibly could communicate. The return route takes 40 minutes through dense cover, and you call 2 brief halts to listen and confirm the route is clear. Each halt lasts 30 seconds, long enough to hear the terrain without long enough to allow complacency to settle into the squad. When the FOB gate comes into view, you feel something release across your shoulders that you did not realize you were carrying. The duty officer meets you at the entrance and confirms that your fragmented transmission reached the operations center 11 minutes after you sent it. A quick reaction force had already been staged and was preparing to move toward your grid when the ridge figures withdrew northward. You give the duty officer a full verbal report, covering the boot prints, the comms failure, the ridge movement, and the withdrawal route. Your voice stays level throughout the entire report, and you notice that your hands are completely still at your sides during it. Kowalski stands beside you during the debrief and adds nothing, because everything that needs to be said you have already said clearly. You sit outside the operations tent afterward with your back against the wall and your rifle across your knees in the dirt. The squad moves around the FOB behind you, returning equipment and eating and talking in the quiet way soldiers talk after close calls. You think about the draw, about the 2 seconds of wait before something quieter took over and started functioning inside you. You do not know exactly when you stopped waiting for someone else to make the call and started being the person who makes it. Kowalski walks past you and drops a full canteen beside your boot without stopping or saying a single word to you. That canteen is the only debrief that actually matters, and you drink from it slowly while the ridge sits silent in the distance.